is muted.
Okay. Let me...
All right, guys. Jeremy Gill, Andy Montoya with Practical Defense. We have Michael Horanburg with the NRA here. He's going to discuss a couple of the bills that are going to be heard and hopefully defeated in Santa Fe. So we're going to take a couple minutes to give you all some opportunity and time to share this up with your friends and family. Make sure you share this out there in the different groups that you're in. That way we get more people listening. Michael has some great information on these two bills that are coming up. And if you guys are familiar with them, and if you're not familiar with them, they basically seek to, I guess, create a backdoor gun registration in the long term. But Michael will go in a little bit more detail about it. So go ahead and share this out with your friends and family, and then we'll get started in just a minute.
So Jeremy, right now, since I'm in Facebook jail with my other page, you're going to have to share to ACOA and all the other groups because I can't.
Okay. I can get that going. If you guys...
Shooters, Albuquerque shooters, but if you can forward them on, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, if you guys want to just go ahead. Michael, you can maybe give a better introduction about yourself than I did if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Andy. My name is Michael Horanburg, and I am I'm with the Institute for Legislative Action of the National Rifle Association, and I oversee the Four Corners states. And so I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I oversee New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. And from that, we see a lot of different pieces of legislation come forward, and positive, negative, pro-gun, anti-gun, whatever it may be. But at ILA, at the Institute for Legislative Action, we are, we're prepared, we're ready to go. But the ability to fight these bills comes from everyone who, supports the Second Amendment, who owns a firearm throughout New Mexico, and so on and so forth. So in order to, talk about these pieces of legislation, we have to first kind of talk the bigger issue, and that is the fact that former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg has come into New Mexico and is pouring a ton of money into the campaign cycle, and now we're looking at the return, and that is a direct result, we believe, and that is Senate Bill 48 and House Bill 50. Both of them presented at the beginning of this legislative session that started last week, and sponsored by Representative Stephanie Richard Garcia out of Los Alamos. And both of these pieces of legislation, almost identical, deal with, on the broader scheme, universal background checks. But we talk about them in the way that they're private transfer firearm bans, and they're a ban on the private transfer of firearms between individuals. And of course, these two pieces of legislation go into pretty good detail on allowances such as immediate family members. If you are hunting with someone, if you are at a range, they still allow a private transfer to go back and forth. But the legislation opens up the door for a lot of questions. It raises a lot of doubt about what that private transfer looks like. There are a lot of undefined terms within the legislation that concerns us, and we believe that this might be the first step in many of their attempts to limit Second Amendment rights in New Mexico. And of course, we've seen this across the country. Everybody, we bring up Maine, where we defeated the Bloomberg initiative there, and then Nevada, where we almost defeated it. We lost by about 9,900 votes there in Nevada. But now we see the Attorney General, ruling that as something null and void almost. So that discussion is ongoing in Nevada, but now we're seeing that discussion, that debate come here to New Mexico. And this is a state that, we cherish our Second Amendment rights. That is a tradition. It passes down from generation to generation. And this is a bill these are bills, these are two pieces of legislation that are trying to go after that tradition, after that Second Amendment that we all cherish. And so the way to get involved, the way to fight these, are to reach out to your legislators, talk to your representative, talk to your senator, talk to your local government officials, and talk about SB 48, talk about House Bill 50, the private transfer ban bills, and tell them that you don't support it. You don't support a ban on private transfers, but B, ask them questions. If you're in 4-H, if you run a range, if you own a gun shop, if you're an individual that likes to go hunting or go to the range or whatever it may be, concealed carry classes, all of these different scenarios raise a whole new host of questions that this legislation does not address. But ask your legislators. Ask them, if you were to transfer a firearm, hunting, and it says nearby, and say you're a mile away from your friend or your family member, you transferring that firearm, is that legal? Is it illegal? We don't know. And that's why we have to ask those questions of our legislators. And if they don't know how to answer those questions, they shouldn't be voting on the legislation. They shouldn't be involved in voting yes or no because they don't know how to answer the question. And maybe we call the sponsors of this legislation, we ask them to define what they mean by a lot of this different stuff. So that all being said, you can go onto our nraila.org website and also the nrailafrontlines.com, 2 websites that have information about the legislation. We also have a petition going where we're asking people to sign throughout the state, sign to say no. We don't support, we're law-abiding citizens, and we don't support private transfers. And then also, as we get closer to when committees are being held, which, by the way, this Saturday could be the first committee. They don't tell us, days in advance. Sometimes they give us hours of notice, but it could be coming up this Saturday. And we know that one of the bills are going to be heard next week. So signing up for the nraila.org alerts, going on to nrailafrontlines.com, signing up for the alerts on that website as well. They come directly from me. You're going to hear information that pertains to New Mexico, how it pertains to your Second Amendment rights right here in New Mexico. And I encourage you to do that. So that way, when these do go to committee, we're going to ask you to go to committee. We're going to ask you to contact your legislators. And we're going to ask you to stand up and protect your Second Amendment rights and ask those questions, kind of like how I outlined there before. So just taking that time. So Andy and Jeremy, I know, Andy, you attended an event that our NRA state liaison hosted at Calibers here in Albuquerque. And I just wanted to see if you all had any questions that I can address. And if there are any questions out there for me, I'm happy to address them today.
Yeah, Michael, first of all, I want to thank you for your time coming and talking to us and sharing your insight. I do have a couple things. You mentioned a petition. Where can we find that petition to sign it?
Right, yeah, well, I'm happy to, when I sign off of here, I'll go ahead and comment, and I'll put it in the comments of the live feed. And then I'll email it to you as well. You can send it out to your friends, family, supporters, whatever it may be. And then I'll post it on my Facebook as well. I know we're both friends on Facebook, and I'll go ahead and share that again, so that way it's right there, and we can share that and kind of boost that again. We originally started that just before the legislative session started, and we have a few thousand people signed on. So.
Okay, and then just a couple questions that we did cover in the meeting, but I'd like to share with everybody that's out watching us. Myths. So a couple things that people have said. Well, I'm not going to be too worried about this bill because Governor Martinez will just veto it. That's one of the myths that I've heard. And then also, if we are going to go out and protest, if anybody wants to protest, what are your thoughts as far as members of the public who have their right to go and open carry? What are your thoughts as far as protesting as actually being armed and open carrying in front of the state? Can you touch a little bit on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. Thanks, Andy. First and foremost, you're absolutely right. The myth that even if it passes the legislature, passes the House and the Senate, that Governor Martinez will veto it. Well, we know that not to be true. In 2013, she expressed interest in signing HB 77, and now we see that in a quote from a newspaper that she's leaning towards signing the legislation. So it's on us to kill this in the legislature if at all possible. And on the second question, they're talking about open carry protesting in the roundhouse. You know, we're all for open carry. We're all for practicing your Second Amendment rights. But we are used to this. We're used to open carry. We're used to carrying our firearms on a regular basis. But there are people who aren't so used to that. And the roundhouse is a place for open dialogue for and against every piece of legislation that comes up there. And I think it's incumbent upon us as law-abiding and responsible firearm owners to show that we are responsible. And maybe that's not always the best thing to do, but that's incumbent upon you as an individual. That's your right, and it's legal, and you're able to, in the roundhouse, to open carry, concealed carry. One of the few Capitol buildings in the country that you're still allowed to do that. But when you go to committee rooms and you testify in front of those committees, I would encourage you, go and be prepared. Look at what we have online, look at the language that we have, talk about the private transfers that would affect you as an individual. Talk about how these pieces of legislation affect you as someone who practices their Second Amendment right, because that's what will actually influence legislators. They'll hear from the other side, from the Bloomberg types, that the Second Amendment is outdated or something along those lines. But we know that not to be true, and so it's upon us to fight for this. So that's my suggestion when you go up to Santa Fe.
So when we're if we're going to speak in the committee, are there time limits that we have? What should we do to best prepare for that session?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Yeah. So I would, of course, look what we have online. Look at the nraila.org website. Again, I'll share all that on the comments here in a minute. So look at that information, and then check. Keep an eye on social media as well. The petition was going around there for a little while. More information will come out. Time frame, it's really up to the individual committee and how much time they want to allow each person. Some of these committees can go 30 minutes, some of them can go for 12 hours. It just depends on how many individuals show up for a certain issue. And we know that this is a hot button issue for a lot of people in New Mexico, and that's why we're fighting so hard. And we know that some of these committees, they last for a long time, so make sure you're prepared for that. But it's worth it. I guarantee you it's worth it to go to Santa Fe and sit in front of your legislators, the people who are elected to represent us and to serve us as voters, as residents of New Mexico, and voice your opinion. They need to hear from us. They need to hear that we stand for the Second Amendment. They need to hear from us that private transfers can affect us as individuals, and organizations like 4-H and Boy Scouts and other groups throughout the state. And these personal stories are what's going to change the hearts and minds of these legislators.
Right. Talking to Tara Micha, she was saying, it's important to point out when you are calling your legislators and emailing, these are inintrusive, and it's also unenforceable as far as our law enforcement's concerned. Something you mentioned is as far as hunter. I'm a hunter myself. If you have a buddy that wants to borrow your rifle because his broke, and for some reason you have to leave camp, now he's in violation of the law. Who's going to enforce those laws? We already have been told that many sheriff's departments are against this law as well because it's unenforceable. There's no way for them to be able to, ask you, hey, is this your gun? So in our concern is, is this the next step leading up to gun registration and trying to adopt some of the laws that California and New York has through Bloomberg. So I thank you for coming on, and I appreciate what you're doing for us. We want to get out and help, and we wanted to bring you on today to make sure that, people are seeing a face to our NRA and get more people involved.
Great. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to do this as well. And I think you and Jeremy and everyone else that's watching, everyone who will participate tonight. And of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here. I'm face of NRA here, and I can answer questions. I can give you direction on certain things. It's what we're here for, and we're happy to do it for you. So again, thank you all for having me. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to send me a message on Facebook or email me at any time, and I'll drop all of that stuff into a comment here in just a minute as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for coming on. We look forward to defeating these bills with you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, guys. So that was Michael Horanburg. He's the local NRA rep here, helping us defeat these gun bills that are currently up for vote in Santa Fe. So it's going to take everybody's involvement to get out there and help defeat those. I'm leaning towards more of a business casual, professional interaction with those guys. We'll have plenty of groups that go up there for armed demonstration, open carry, which is great. I think that is something that we still need, but I think we need to come at it from every angle, right? Because the guys that are going to vote against this and essentially taking away the Second Amendment hearing, or part of the Second Amendment here in New Mexico, I think those guys are going to do it regardless. So we need to focus on the people that haven't made their mind up, who still care about the Second Amendment and our gun rights here in New Mexico. And I think the best way to do that is appeal to them, right? Like, if they truly want to reduce crime in the state of New Mexico, well, let's talk about the stuff that's actually going to do that, right? We saw today or yesterday, a woman is charged with child abuse, aggravated child abuse that resulted in the death of her toddler, and they let her out, but she's wearing an ankle bracelet, right? Last year, towards the end of last year, there was a guy who was facing first-degree murder charges. He was let out ROR. That means he didn't have to put up anything to ensure his appearance in court. Okay, so there are some things that we can do that, as much as they want to tout common sense gun laws, how about we just get back to common sense and enforcing the laws that we have on the books and holding these criminals accountable, right? I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired, sick and tired of waking up and seeing somebody who stabbed somebody to death and is that, well, he had a long criminal history. If the jails are overcrowded, let's build some more jails. Okay, we have some fine men and women in this state that can build nice things. I'm sure we can manage building a jail to house some of these guys that should not be walking out amongst you and I. So if you guys are just jumping on, the first 15 minutes or so of this segment, we had Michael Horanburg on from the NRA. He's our local NRA guy. Some great information on the two bills that are going to be heard in Santa Fe that will require background checks for all firearm transactions and transfers, right? So if Andy and I were out at the gun range and I wanted to loan him my gun and I was going to be away for, I don't know, they don't say how long, then he would have to undergo a background check before I transferred it to him. And then for me to receive my personal property back, I'd have to undergo and pass a background check. And if you're one of these guys that gets delayed on occasion, every third or fourth 4473 that I go through, I'm delayed, right? I know some guys that get delayed every time. And I know a guy that was denied, had to go through the appeal process, get a UPen, and that took 6 months, right? So you don't want to find that out after you've loaned your buddy your gun and you're not going to be able to get it back. The second part, Andy, did you have anything else on that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, just real quick, something else that we touched on in this meeting that we spoke about earlier is the people that are trying to support this bill, they're calling this closing the online and gun show loophole, and it's absolutely furthest from the truth. There is no language in the bill from what I've seen that explains anything about the gun show loophole or online, which we all know in order to transfer a firearm, you've got to do a NICS background check anyway. But that's what they're trying to label it. They're trying to have the media push it as closing the online loophole. So that's very important that we get that message out, that this has nothing to do with the online or gun show loophole. This solely responsibility of them trying to further regulate our guns and our firearms. So just finally, again, reach out to your legislators, reach out to your senators. I sent emails out today myself. Just a little bit of recommendation, be professional with them. explain to them, like Michael Horanburg said, explain to them how it affects you. The story goes, you can attract bees with honey and not with vinegar. So we, as gun owners, we still need to remain respectful. So if you're just hopping on and you didn't get a chance to see that, please take some time after this live video and watch that with Michael Horanburg. It's great information.
Absolutely. And then the next part of this video, what we're going to do is we're going to share a video or two of a shooting surveillance video, and then we're going to discuss it in the comments down here. So make sure you're on the Practical Defense page, Practical Defense Training LLC. Make sure you're on that. That way you can see and comment and interact with one another. We're not going to be able to feed those comments up onto the screen, but you guys can kind of follow them through the thread there. And then Andy and I will discuss it from our perspective. Andy will play, well, I will be the devil's advocate, right? So in the shooting that we're going to see, it's a gentleman that uses deadly force. So Andy will be arguing that it's justified. I'll be arguing that it's not justified. That doesn't change my opinion or stance on personal protection and the use of deadly force. It's just going to bring to light some of the arguments and some of the legal obstacles that if you were the gentleman involved in this self-defense shooting, that you would most likely encounter and have to overcome. And then we will also discuss some of the things that he did wrong, why he did them wrong, in our opinion. And we'd love to have your guys' feedback there. So we have Judson on. Hey, Justin. Hey, thanks for joining us again. Justin, great to have you back. So make sure you're checking that out in the comments. Share this with your friends and family as we cue this video up for you folks. And then let us know how you like this. If you like last week's format a little bit better, if you like this week's format better, please let us know. If you saw any of the live feeds that we did last night, you're probably surprised that we were able to make this happen. We had quite a few hiccups that we experienced, and we're able to finally settle in on this solution that I think is going to work out well enough for what we're planning on doing. So without further ado, let's cue up this video. You guys have probably seen this video before. You've probably seen it. I know we shared it on the Practical Defense page shortly after it broke, and we had a pretty lively discussion in those feeds. So feel free to comment and let me know what you guys think. All right, here we go. Andy, while the video is playing, if you want to comment on anything, you'll just have to hold down the space bar. Right, so you guys are going to see two cars in here, two cars pulling in. We're going to have the first car pull in and park. Everything looks normal until right about here. Let's just watch it. You're going to see the guy get back into his car, pulls out a handgun, and uses deadly force. What are your guys' initial thoughts on that? Do you think the gentleman in the long sleeve white button down there, do you think that would be a justified shooting? Do you think he's going to jail, going to court? What are your guys' thoughts on that? And we'll give you a few minutes to go ahead and get that in the screen or in the comment section while we play this video one more time for you folks. Jeremy McKinney says self-defense. All right, so we're going to go ahead and stop the video there because it's over.
Hey, Jeremy, I have no sound.
Sorry about that. All right. So we have Jeremy McKinney who said it was self-defense. Michael said that it crossed the line. Sorry about losing the audio on that, guys. We'll get it back. Let's take a lip reading comment, and that way, anytime I have some issues, we'll be able to work it out. So let's get in here. Can't hear Jeremy. That sound should be coming back probably by. Can you hear me now, Andy? Andy, can you hear me? Okay, we cannot hear you. So unmute on the right-hand side. You should say audio on. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
There we go. Are we back on?
There we go. Cool. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So we have Jeremy McKinney said that it was self-defense. Craig Stock said that the requirements were met. Justin Ingram says, I don't think it would be self-defense. Looked like there was people coming to help. He crossed the line. Okay. All right. So, Andy, what are your thoughts?
Well, for me, when you watch the video, clearly something transpired before this happened, whether it was road rage, which is kind of my opinion. I think there was some road rage involved probably prior. One guy following the other in. When he gets out of the vehicle, he grabs whatever that is, a stick. And at that point, when he comes and the other guy opens the door and he takes that swing at him, you know, for me, I would think that's justified shooting, because right away, you know, definition of justified shooting or defense is not only your life's at stake, but also grave bodily harm. So with a stick like that, as simple as a jab in the throat or a poke in the eye, you could lose an eye or, you know, become blacked out, and who knows at that point what's going to happen to you. So for me, I would say that's justified. He got, you know, he got back in, he pulled his firearm, came out, shot the guy, and he stopped the threat. So to me, it seems like it's justified.
Yeah. So Michael says justified to start and then took it too far and continued to fire after the threat was over. Let's go. We can. Cool. People on the way, so you let a psycho attack you. Okay. So, of course, I'm the devil's advocate in this, right? So I'm going to say the shooting was not justified for a couple reasons, right? And I'm going to look at this from the perspective of New Mexico and what the New Mexico statutes require, right? So if we're looking at that, so deadly force is any force that is substantial enough to cause death or great bodily harm. In the video, the guy presents a weapon, right? I'm going to cue the video up again. Right, so we can see the video. He is going to get out of his car, right? Goes back to his trunk, grabs a weapon, comes out, and then he attempts to use that weapon on the guy in the white shirt. Does that weapon present the ability to cause death or great bodily harm? Yes, I would agree on that. Does the attacker have the opportunity to cause death or great bodily harm? Yes, I would agree on that as well. And through his words and actions, has he created a situation in which a reasonable person would believe that he was about to cause death or great bodily harm? And I would say, yes, I agree on that one as well. So Craig Stock, you're absolutely right. All three of the requirements are there. They are met. A reasonable person would agree with those, right? So at first glance, it looks like that would be the case. It's going to be ruled justified. We can say that he's the innocent participant in this altercation. However, we don't know for sure if he had any involvement in what led to the road rage incident. We don't know if he fired 3 or 4 rounds at him miles ago. But that doesn't matter. Let's look at what we see on the video, okay?
Lost audio again. Sorry, am I there? Yeah.
Okay. So in New Mexico, right, all 3 of those criteria must be met. must have the ability, must have the opportunity, must have the jeopardy, right? Must create the jeopardy. All three of those are met. However, the good guy, right, you or I, we must act under the reasonable fear that we are under the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, right? We could say that that video, that attack would cause a reasonable person to be in fear of suffering death or great bodily harm. One of the other requirements in New Mexico, though, is that the defendant, right, which would be you or I, right, must act on that fear alone, right? So we cannot act on anything else other than that fear. And then if we jump ahead here,
I have no sound again.
with so does he act on that reasonable fear alone? I would argue no, he doesn't act on that under that reasonable fear. I would say that there was something else at play, and that's going to be anger. And if we look at the rest of the video, to me, it appears like, doesn't look like somebody who is afraid, not at that point, but he's acting out of anger as well. So regardless of what you or I think, right? Let's get some people telling me I'm wrong in the thread, please. Again, doesn't mean I think he was not justified in the shooting. It just means that I'm arguing that point. And then we'll discuss what we would have done differently, what he should have done differently, and what he will cause for himself. So let's see what we have going on in the comment section over here. Comments going. So Andy, what do you think he did well? Unmute yourself. Right screen, sorry. You're still muted, buddy.
Okay, am I there?
Yeah, you're there now.
Okay. I guess that's going to be a learning in process about how it's automatically muting, I think, when you go to video.
Yeah,
So in my head, I'm brainstorming of all the things that I already think that he could have done better as an armchair quarterback here. But of course, we're just doing this to open our minds and thoughts of future in case we're ever to experience this. I can say the number one thing that I think he did well is he definitely stopped the threat and he kept himself alive. Not much more that I could say. You know, I can think of more things that he could have done better than what he did right.
What do you guys? So what are your guys' thoughts on what he could have done differently? What he did well? How did he act unreasonably? Michael says that's what I think. The shooting was justified at first, but when he shot again over the shoulder, the threat had already been neutralized. Crossed the line in the second shot. Blocked them in. Illegal to start. Anyone who ever trained with professional, they never teach single tap. Never. Jeremy, while you're right in that, we teach shoot to stop the threat. I don't want to argue that point because I do see that he, although he was huddled over, that doesn't necessarily mean that the threat had ended. Right, and then we would be able to discuss and articulate reactionary times, how long it takes us to react and process that he was turned away. So I want to stay away from that. Looking at the shooting in whole, what did it was that he appeared to not act out of fear. Okay, but if we're talking about tactics, let's cue this up. We'll agree that he was in a road rage incident. He was followed somewhere, right? So Andy, if while the video is playing, if you want to talk, just make sure you hit that space bar, or if you on the right hand side, you'll see a little button that says audio on or audio off. And then we'll kind of Monday night quarterback this through. So he was in a road rage incident. If you're ever involved in a road rage incident, the worst thing to do would be to pull into a parking spot where you have no avenue of escape, right? And if we're talking about it from a purely tactic standpoint, if he comes out with a rifle, a handgun, a shotgun, and he decides
I think we lost the audio again.
right. So if he decided to come out of his trunk with a shotgun, a rifle, or a handgun instead of what looked to be a big stick, then we'd have very little opportunity to defend ourselves or escape that threat. All right, and the most important thing is that we make it home to our loved ones at the end of the day. So what are your guys' thoughts on what he did well or what he did not do well? And then chime in with what you would have done differently. And let's go over here to the comment section. Can't hear me. I'm back.
So I guess for me, while we're waiting on some comments, like you said, the first problem that I see is he pulled into that parking spot. Once he got the car behind him, he was pretty much pinned in there, had nowhere to go. And at that point, to me, it became a self-defense situation. Whether it's a stick, whether it's a shotgun, when I see that guy coming at me, the one thing that I see too is he continued to get out of his car even though that guy had a stick in his hand. For me, it seems like a logical person would think, he would have pulled back in, closed the door, and locked the door at least to have, a few more seconds to pull his gun, call 911. A lot of questions. He could have called 911 before he even got in that position if it was something that was an ongoing road rage scenario. Moving past that, we do train to stop the threat, and adrenaline and everything's involved. The biggest thing that concerns me, if you look at that second and third shot, one of them actually to the back of the head, and as the other guy that jumps in the middle of him to try to stop him, he's literally having to hold the guy back, and the guy's already on the floor. So at that point, for me, I think maybe it's changed from justified now to probably manslaughter, because the threat was on the floor. I mean, there wasn't much more to stop that threat, in my opinion. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. So if we're looking at, so would we agree that he's going to go to jail or court? If you guys agree with that, let's get some comments. Let's get some of those heart things going across the thing. If you think that I'm completely off base and he's not going to face any jail time, let's get some of those little angry faces or whatever going across the screen. But if we look at it, it's at least questionable, right? If we look at the comment section of this video alone, the majority of us, I would say everybody on the comment section, we're gun owners, right? We understand that it's our responsibility to save our life, protect ourselves and our family, right? And even amongst us, there's some disagreement here, right? You have people that say that the first shot was justified, the second shot wasn't justified, the last shot wasn't justified, right? Do you think, as a gun owner, as somebody with a concealed carry license, or hopefully going to get a concealed carry license, that the prosecution is going to want you on the jury? Probably not, right? They don't want somebody who takes ownership of that understands that this man's life was legitimately under the threat of death or great bodily harm, right? And while that last shot might not have been justified, he was under that threat of death or great bodily harm, and it was his job to defend himself. If he didn't defend himself, he was not going to get to go home to his family, right? So you and I probably aren't going to sit on the jury on this side, right? It's probably going to be some people who are in the middle or leaning more towards anti-gun. Okay, and if you have a good defense attorney, hopefully they understand how to that jury selection process. so it doesn't get completely stacked against you, right? Because we all know they say a jury of your peers, but it's not going to be. If I'm ever involved in a self-defense shooting, I want 12 of y'all on the jury, right? I want you guys, I want every member to have a concealed carry license. I want you all to have respect for the law. That's who I want on the jury, because I know that they will review that shooting, look at the evidence, and understand that that was the only way that I could have acted. And had I not acted like that, then quite possibly instead of sitting in court, I'd be somewhere underground, right? But knowing that, right, even with gun owners, we have some people that say it was justified. We have some people that say it wasn't justified. And that is going to lead to some legal costs and obstacles that we have to overcome. I think Judson said it best, it's subjective, right? It's going to be the prosecution. The prosecution is going to try to convince the jury that they would not have acted like you acted, right? And then the defense will try to convince the jury that you had to act the way you did and that they would have acted like that, right? So would somebody sitting on that jury, would they have reached around the guy that was intervening and fire that last shot? Maybe, but probably not. Okay, probably not. That person sitting on the jury isn't going to understand that somebody can present a handgun from the waistline or a pocket or 4 o'clock or 1 o'clock or wherever and engage in that distance with rapid successive hits on target in a very small amount of time, quicker than we'd be able to react to that. Okay, they probably aren't going to understand that it's going to take us, the defendant, the good guy, the shooter, going to take us some time, a second, half a second, right, 0.2 of a second to process the fact that he is no longer a threat, right? And if we're already deliberately engaged in the act of defending ourselves by pressing that trigger again, it's going to take us another 1/10 of a second or 0.2 of a second or so to stop that action and understand that we don't have to do that, right? It all doesn't happen instantly. Nearly instantly it does, but it's not instantaneous, right? So the legal costs associated with something like this are going to be insurmountable. And if we look at, what do you guys think, what caused this? Why is this guy, let's get some comments over here. Do you guys think that he's going to jail, he's going to court? Let me get caught up on the comment section here. Jail, no. Court, yes. Yes, court. He's probably going to jail. Yeah, he's probably going to go to jail, at least initially. And if he's in New Mexico facing murder charges, he's probably going to get out ROR, just because our criminal justice system likes to put these bad guys back on the street, right? We saw the lady today or yesterday that she is charged with child abuse that resulted in the death of her toddler. She's on house arrest. Didn't have to put up any financial collateral for that. She just had to agree to wear a little ankle bracelet around and promised to come into court. Last year, the gentleman that was facing first-degree murder charges, he was let out ROR. Again, he didn't have to put up any financial collateral to ensure his appearance in court. And these guys are walking around amongst us. But yeah, he's probably going to go to jail. For me, when the difference is when the shooter gets out of his car and does not have his weapon, so at that point, his intent was not to engage with his weapon. That's a great point, Sam, right? So he would be able to articulate and say, hey, my intent was not to use deadly force, right? That only became my intent when it was the only option that I had to defend myself. I think it leaves too much in question what threats prior to this video, the shooter's mental state that developed during the conflict. Yeah, you're right. And those things would be brought up in court, right? So if he had some involvement in the road rage incident that led to that altercation, the prosecution is most likely going to key in on that and argue against that. They're probably going to argue that he didn't act out of fear alone. In New Mexico, the courts have held that you must act under that fear, right? It has to be a fear that a reasonable person would entertain. You have to entertain that fear, and you must act on that fear alone. When and where is justified jail time? Go ahead, Andy.
Well, just something else too, playing devil's advocate further. If you look at the video again also too, and we're talking about a jury of 12 people who are more than likely not going to be gun owners. If you watch the guy with the stick, he swings that stick right at the frame of the door. It seems to me like if he really wanted to hit the guy, he probably would have hit him. And then as the guy goes into his car and closes the door, he goes and whacks the windshield. it could be easily construed as, for the other guy, if he was alive, of course, or even, a defendant, to say, well, look, he wasn't trying to hurt him. He was just trying to scare him by hitting the window and hitting the door frame. He had every opportunity to hit that guy if he chose to. So just a little bit more thinking involved into it, as far as if you were in that courtroom, some things that, maybe we would hear as far as a defense.
Yeah. One of the other things, let's key in on the, Andy, can you see the comments?
Yeah, I was about to respond. Yes, Michael, I can see your comments. I'm having to refresh it every now and then because it seems like the comments stop for some reason. So I'm also watching your comments as well.
Michael says, Marco Armijo says, definitely road rage. And with that final shot over the shoulder, he's probably going to jail. Understanding that heat in the moment, you're scared, but I personally think he went too far. And that's probably what the jury is going to think, right? That's probably what the prosecutor is going to try to convince the jury of, that he wasn't afraid for his life. He acted on that anger. Jeremy McKinney, it comes down to this: are you going home, or are they? Yeah, that definitely. In the moment, we have to save our life, right? But the fight doesn't stop at the end of the altercation, okay? Because if we're involved in a life-threatening self-defense encounter, or what we perceive to be a life-threatening self-defense encounter, and we use deadly force and we save our life, right, or the life of a loved one, but the DA and the DA doesn't think that we should have used deadly force, and we go to court and we lose that court case, then our family's coming to visit us in jail. So I'm not arguing against the use of deadly force to save our life, right? We're going to show these videos so we can bring out the disagreement, and we can say, hey, we're gun owners. We think it's our responsibility to defend ourselves, and we think this is a questionable shooting, right? And if it's a questionable shooting, it's most likely going to land us in jail, right? At the very least, in court, right? There are people in prison right now that, had they not used deadly force to defend themselves or a loved one, they would have died, or their loved one would have died, or a stranger would have died, right? So we don't want to be that case, right? And that's why we want to bring this out. We want to reduce the level of fear that we're going to experience out there in the real world, right? In the Walmart parking lots or the bank parking lots or wherever we're at. That way, when we act on that fear, it's a fear that we're acting on that a reasonable person would experience, right? And we're going to act under that fear alone. If we're looking at road rage, right? So we would agree that this is a road rage incident, and it might not be, okay? This guy might have stalked him and followed him. But let's say, for the purposes of discussion, that it's a road rage incident, because that's something that we're more likely to experience and encounter than that stalking incident, okay? So if we're looking at a road rage that leads to a self-defense shooting, road rage looks a whole lot like mutual combat, right? And if it's mutual combat, then the argument that I had to use deadly force to save my life becomes a little bit less valid, a lot less valid, right? Because then the prosecution can say, had it not been for your actions, you would not have been in a situation where you had to use deadly force. So you own some of the outcome of that, right? So if Andy and I agreed to a fist fight and he begins beating me up, right, and then I have to pull out my handgun and shoot him, I can't say, well, hey, I had to use it because I was losing that fist fight, right? Now, if he pulls out a knife and he unreasonably escalates the level of force, then that's a different argument, right? But that's an argument that's going to cost us several thousand, in the tunes of tens of thousands of dollars to make and win, right? So that's kind of what we're doing with these videos. Do I think he's going to jail? I'm not sure about that, right? It depends on how much money he has to spend on the legal defense, right? Because with a good lawyer, he might be able to escape jail time. Do I think he's going to have to go to court? Yeah, absolutely. I do think so. If it was in New Mexico, I'd absolutely think that with 99% certainty that he's going to go to court. And then what happens thereafter, it's up to the prosecution and the defense, right, to prove their case. And that's something that I'm not willing to risk my freedom on, right? I don't want to, I'm not going to bet my life on the mercy of a criminal, but I also don't want to bet my freedom on the competence of my defense attorney or the incompetence of a prosecutor, right? Absolutely, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, right? I believe that wholeheartedly. but I'd rather experience neither of those things. Michael brings up a great point. That's why I have self-defense insurance. And we'll delve into this topic on another one of our live feeds. But Andy, if you want to go ahead and discuss self-defense insurance kind of briefly, and then kind of set us up for that discussion that we'll have.
Okay. Yeah, just something that another thing they're asking about. We follow up this case and do follow-ups on the processes if they're available. A lot of times we got to keep in mind that some of these videos, in fact, I believe this one's in another country, believe it or not. But for all intents and purposes, what we want to do is we want to pretend that every video that we show you is out of New Mexico, and we want to try to apply those laws to New Mexico. And like we said, more often than not, being a liberal state, probably going to be at the very least arrested. Hard to say if you'd be let out, probably due to our judicial system, as Jeremy talked about. So as far as self-protection insurance, I believe anybody who carries a gun, regardless, concealed carry, open carry, a hunter, to me, the insurance, $20 a month, is well worth the gold that it is. There's many options out there. We've discussed this kind of briefly. Second Call Defense, CCW Safe, USCCI. Any of those insurances are better than anything. And I think we've kind of covered a lot of that in the past thing. Myself, I'm currently on USCCA, but I'm planning on changing over to Second Call Defense. Jeremy, I believe, is on CCW Safe. So there's some great options. As we've talked about in the past, even though you have maybe saved your life, like in this scenario here, you can be sued for anything, and you probably are going to be. With the case of, I believe his name was Jason Boyd, the homeless man that was shot in the Fort Hills. You know, if anybody's here in Albuquerque or followed that at all, it's been a long process. There was talk of cousin coming out of the woodworks and planning on suing the city of Albuquerque also, and they can do that. You can sue for anything. So if you have that insurance card in your pocket, it's worth its weight in gold. Does anybody else add in some comments here? What you feel about concealed carry insurance, or I should call it self-defense insurance more than concealed carry insurance. What are your thoughts? Give me some ideas that you think good or bad. Your personal experiences, if you have it, if you don't. If you do not, again, we can help you with that. Contact myself or Jeremy. We can get you that information. The three that I know of the best is Second Call Defense, CCW, and USCCA. So let's get some comments and let us know what you think and how you feel about self-defense insurance.
Yeah, self-defense insurance. It is it's something that you should carry. It's going to be a small one-time investment or monthly investment on your part. But if you ever have to use deadly force in self-defense, it will immediately pay for itself and then some, several thousand times over. George Zimmerman case, before it made it to trial, day one of trial, estimates were that his legal fees were over $1 million. There was a gentleman here in New Mexico that used deadly force to save a woman that was being stabbed by her estranged husband. Didn't face any criminal prosecution, but on the civil side, the fees ran up over $163,000. When you're looking into insurance, call around. Don't just do the compare insurance thing that each website is going to have, right? Because they're all going to highlight what's best about them. You want to get on the phone with those guys and you want to say, hey, let's imagine for a minute that 15 minutes ago, I had to use deadly force. I shot and killed somebody. What are your first immediate actions, right? What are you doing? What does it look like for me? Are you going to reimburse me my court fees if I'm found innocent or it's ruled justifiable, right? If it's a justified homicide, are you going to reimburse me the $160,000 or the $200,000 that I had to spend on my legal defense, right? Or are you going to provide that financial assistance directly to my attorney and my legal defense team? So Jetson Crossland says, federal law says an insurance policy cannot pay while you are under indictment, right? So if it's an insurance policy, they're not going to be able to pay you any money, Okay, they will reimburse you if if that shooting was found justified. Okay. Now with CCW safe and second call defense, it's not insurance, self-defense insurance. Although Andy and I will refer to it as self-defense insurance because I think that's the easiest way to refer to it, where people aren't like, "What are you talking about?" Right? It's not self-defense insurance as much as it is a self-defense membership. Okay. So you belong much like to a police union, like CCW Safe explained it to me. It's like joining a police union where they will help you out with the legal finances. Yeah, the man who shot the guy at Walmart that was attacking a student, he did have a hell of time in court. I don't know if we're talking about the same one, Michael. I'll double check and get some details. Rick Davis, if you know him, he's with Deliberate Defense. He knows the guy personally, and him and I have had conversations about that shooting that I had referenced. It might be, and I might have my facts on who was involved with it incorrectly. Judson, yeah, self-defense protection. That's what I would reference it. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, the same thing, and it's probably something that I need to fix personally because I call it insurance because it ensures that we have some kind of protection. But yeah, to make the proper term, for future we should probably reference it as self-defense protection. I'm also stealing this from Judson as well because I just took his class and he told me I could. He said he knows of a story where there was a self-defense shooting. The guy that shot called second call defense right there on the spot, handed the phone over to the police, and he was not arrested. And if you want to clear that up for me, Judson, I'm pretty sure that was the story that you told us. But something like that, man, it's gold again. Beyond even the dollar side, I don't want to get put in the cell with these guys that you're going to see even in a holding tank. You know, that's not my thing. So if it's able to get you out of immediately like that, it's an awesome deal. On top of that, look into negligent discharge. Hopefully it doesn't happen. There's a chance that it will. We had a guy on our Facebook page that admitted it happened to him here recently. We hope and we train and we have a thought process that we're never going to have a negligent discharge, but the reality is it could happen. Second call defense, I do know they also cover negligent discharge too. So just something to think of. It's one more extra protection. If you never have a negligent discharge, great. But if you do, you have that protection.
And you can have more than one. So there's no reason that you can't join second call defense, USCCA, CCW Safe. So you can have more than one. And those guys, if they're reputable, like CCW Safe and second call defense, both of those, they will work with one another to make sure that the bill gets paid, right? That the attorney fee gets paid. It's not going to be, the one guy saying, well, no, insurance A covers it. And they're like, well, no, insurance B is supposed to cover it. They understand that we're out here. We're good guys. We're acting how we should be acting. And if we have to use deadly force, it's in defense of ourselves or another.
Yeah, Michael, are you talking about the stabbing that the man shot the husband that was stabbing the wife in the Walmart in the deli? Is that the one you're referring to, or is it something different? You can comment to it.
That's the one. That's the one. I think we were both referring to the same shooting incident. And Michael, let's shoot me a PM, or I'll shoot you a PM. I want to make sure I have the details ironed out about that. If I can get a name or something, that way I can go back and look at it. That way I have the facts. Because right now it's all hyperbole, and it's all secondhand accounts. So I want to make sure that I'm giving the correct information out. But to my knowledge, that's the case. He spent a whole lot of money on the civil side, but didn't face any criminal prosecution. But let us know what you guys think of this feed. Next week we'll be back at Tuesday at 6. Andy, did you have anything else before we finish out our little outro deal?
Yeah. So there's just one more thing I want to share because I seen it in another post, and in addition to all what we're doing now, we want to help with concealed carry laws and to make sure, number one, we're out of the morgue, and number two, we're out of jail. With New Mexico, we do have some funny laws. We kind of talked about this in our prior discussion. There was some talk that the beer and wine So you can't carry a firearm open or concealed in any restaurant that serves hard liquor, alcohol, tequila, vodka, any of your spirits. If you have a location that serves beer and wine only, you can conceal carry in there as long as the gross receipts for food are 60%. So there was some talk about the law changing. It has not changed. It is still the same law. They have just kind of cleared it up in the verbiage on the law. So if you do go to the New Mexico statute and see some changes there, that's what it is. So we can still conceal carry, but you cannot drink into a location that does sell beer and wine with 60% of its gross sales for food. I just wanted to point that out. But that's all I have tonight. Thank you guys for coming in and visiting with us again. Excuse us for the audio. We did try a new program, which I think is so far working out. We would like to get some more guests on in the future, maybe some admins of other pages. Guys like Judson, who's an NRA counselor, he's going to have a NRA instructor class here coming up February 25th and 26th here in Albuquerque. He can come and talk about that. So if you guys would like to hop on with us, send us all a private message, or myself or Jeremy, and let's get you on there. So that's all I have. You guys, again, thank you for spending time with us, and I'll turn it over to Jeremy.
So point of clarification, Michael brought up a good point. Multiple coverage would imply that you are planning to have an issue. Yeah, if you have self-defense insurance, the prosecution is going to look at that as intent, that you intended to use deadly force.
Right.
Right. So we just have to be able to articulate not only that, but any and every decision that we make with regards to concealed carry and how we defend ourselves. Okay. So they're going to say that you decided to carry a gun, right? You had self-defense insurance, you wanted to shoot and kill somebody, right? I have homeowners insurance, automobile insurance, health insurance, life insurance. I don't plan or hope that I have to use any of those. They're there for the worst case scenario. So much like health insurance is there for the worst case scenario, or your homeowner's insurance is there for the worst case scenario, the self-defense insurance is there for the worst case scenario. Right. So as Andy was saying, we would like to have some more people on here. I'd love to have Judson come on and discuss that NRA instructor program that he's going to be putting on down here. So not to put you on the spot, he's also working with us. We're working with him to get a trauma first aid course put together. And then the cost of that class is ridiculously inexpensive. Right. So there's really no reason for you not to do that. I believe it's right around, don't quote me on this price unless it's correct. I believe it's right around $150. The instructor, we need about a class of 8 to 10 students. And we're looking at probably in the next 4 to 5 months. So if you don't have an extra $150 in your bank account right now, I would say, hey, let's start saving $40 or $50 a month. That way, when this class comes around, we can see you guys in that class getting trained, right? Because if you're in a gunfight or a knife fight, you're probably going to get shot or stabbed. Somebody you know and love might get shot or stabbed. So it's important to be able to save life, not only take it. We'd also like to open up these video discussions to more of you all, right? So I noticed some of you guys have been on here 2 weeks in a row. So what I'd like to do going forward is, we're going to say, hey, we're going to have discussion on this incident or this or that. Shoot me a PM, right? So shoot us a PM now, right, in the next day or so, and say, hey, I'd love to come on the show. You'll be in a nice, pretty little box like Andy and I are, and like Michael Horanburg was, and then you'll be able to be out there live for the Facebook world. We can have quite a few people on with us. That's the trade-off. Instead of having the pretty little comments show up down here, we're able to get more of you guys on the show and involved with us. So those are some plans that we have coming up for this. I'd like to get law enforcement officers on here. So if you guys have anybody that you'd like to see on our weekly broadcast show, feel free to shoot us their information. I think we're going to move this back to 6:30 on Tuesdays. I just think that that's going to work out a little bit better for you guys. I noticed most of y'all are jumping on about the 6:15, 6:20 mark. So I think if we push it back to 6:30 and see how that goes. And then, so if you guys have any other questions, feel free to let us know. We have a military members seminar coming up February 11th. That's going to be from 9 to 12. If you're a member of the military, if you were an active duty reserve member of the military, if you signed a piece of paper that said you would give your life for this country by serving in our armed forces, and you have been out of that branch of military, for less than 20 years. You don't have to pay you don't have to take a New Mexico concealed carry course, and you don't have to pay the New Mexico state application fee. You should still know how to legally and responsibly carry a firearm in such a manner that you're not going to commit a 4th-degree felony. Judson, 6:30 is dinner time. Let us know what you're having. We'll coordinate those times, and we'll do a better job of getting the broadcast time out for you guys a day or so in advance. Right. So if you don't have to take a class to get your license, but you wouldn't mind spending 3 hours in a classroom with Andy and I, going over where you can and cannot carry, go to abqconcealedcarry.com and register for that. We have a 4-year refresher, 2-year renewal class coming up on this Saturday at 8. It's from 8:30 to 12:30. You can find out more information at abqconcealedcarry.com. And then our next New Mexico concealed carry course for any of your friends, family, or loved ones, it will be February 18th and 19th, 9 to 5 both days at the Albuquerque Shooting Range Park. The cost of that is $145, $120 if you register early. And then we do offer group discounts and all that good stuff. But please, please, please help spread the word for the military members seminar. That's free, doesn't cost them anything. Cost Andy and I a little bit of money, but it doesn't cost those guys anything to come out and get that information. And we'd love to fill that thing right now. It's going to be at the Albuquerque Shooting Range Park. My goal is to need to book a bigger venue, and we're about 20% of the way to needing to do that. But it was great having you guys on. I appreciate everybody's comments and feedback, spending some time with us. Make sure you share this video with your friends, family, and loved ones. And we will see you guys next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, tentatively scheduled, if I can say that. You have a good night. Stay safe. It's your life. It's your safety and protection. It's your responsibility.